Hi, I'm Erin Power.
And I'm Laura Rupsis.
We're certified health coaches, and this is Health Coach Radio.
This podcast is about the art, science, and business of health coaching.
We share our insider tips to help you become a better coach and entrepreneur.
And we interview expert guests to discover how they've made it in this growing field.
It's time for health coaches to make an impact.
It's time for Health Coach Radio.
Today's episode is brought to you by the Health Coach Success Virtual Masterclass. My co-host Laura and I worked hard to pull together this special online event just for you. It's a 5-day mini course in which we interview the best and brightest health coach and marketing experts on the planet to try to understand how they've become such great coaches and entrepreneurs. Included in the 20-plus expert interviews are some names you might recognize. Primal Health Coach Institute founder Mark Sisson, celebrity nutrition expert and New York Times bestselling author J.J. Virgin, author, cardiologist, and staunch health coach advocate Dr. William Davis, Michelle Liotta of Health Coach Power Community, Michelle Norris, CEO of Paleo FX and ID Life Nutrition, and many, many more. The Health Coach Success Virtual Masterclass is now available and totally free for a limited time. Check it out at primalhealthcoach.com/success. Today's guest is Brian Sanders, host of the Peak Human podcast, a great show with lots of epic guests. Brian is also producing his very own nutrition documentary, Food Lies, which he hopes will, once and for all, dispel the myths and arguments surrounding the optimal human diet. He's the originator of what he calls the Sapien diet, a whole foods approach that prioritizes satiety and nutrient density. We talked about a lot of fun things on this show, including about what health coaches and professionals as a collective can be doing better to truly improve the health of the human race. The show notes for this episode and all previous episodes of Health Coach Radio can always be found at primalhealthcoach.com/radio. Let's get into it with Brian Sanders.
All right, Brian Sanders, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm so good. How are you?
Oh, we're doing great. We're excited to talk to you.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So we like to start every podcast with just inviting you to tell us, the 3 to 5 minute backstory of Brian Sanders and kind of your background, how you got into what you're into right now and kind of what brought you here.
Okay. Yeah. I have sort of a circuitous path. I started as a mechanical engineer. So grew up in Hawaii, went to UCLA for mechanical engineering, did that, worked in the engineering world. And part of the story is I got these overuse injuries from using the computer too much. I was designing 3D models. I was actually doing some cool stuff with Disney and Universal Studios and building rides and all that. But I just got overuse injuries. I had to quit. Fumbling around, just got into tech. Then I kind of just had these overuse injuries forever. And I got into nutrition somehow with just my friends telling me, hey, I found this. It was actually Mark Sisson's Primal Blueprint. They're like, hey, you got to read this. This is great. I started changing my ways. I got fat adapted and all my overuse injuries went away. It was so interesting. After 10 years of this, all that inflammation just went away from my wrists and my forearms. And I was like, there's something to this. And I was kind of following the food pyramid. Now that I look back, I realized that I was doing the whole like balanced diet and grains and veggies and this and that and lean meats. And, I made some simple switches. I was kind of skinny fat, like a lot of people like, hey, this guy's always skinny. Like, don't listen to him. I'm like, no, I didn't look good. Like I was like the guy with like skinny arms and a belly. That's a terrible look. So I that completely reversed. I dropped 4 pant sizes, even though everyone thought I was healthy the whole time. I was 4 pant sizes less than that. And now I'm, putting on lean muscle and feel amazing and all the normal things people probably know about who are listening, when you make changes in your diet. So I got into that world. Then around that time, I saw What the Health, right? This was a couple years ago and it came out, whatever summer that was. And I was like, well, someone needs to make the opposite movie because this is not correct, I don't think. And, maybe there is some value in, plant-based diets or plant-forward diets, but I didn't really like what they were saying. They're twisting history even, about human history and to, just kind of, I don't think they did a good job of being unbiased. So decided to make my own film. So I'm making a film called Food Lies. Been filming it for a couple years. Have a lot of great people in it. Do a podcast with all those great people that I interviewed for the film called Peak Human. And I started a company called Sapien. We're just trying to do all these things to help get this message across, help people understand healthy diets. And that's kind of my life. I even started a grass-fed meat company where I ship meat out to everyone called Nose to Tail. So I'm just trying to hit all bases. And I talk to a lot of regenerative agriculture farmers. And so really, really hitting in this on all sides, and, even making technology to help health coaches. So we can get into that later too.
Ooh.
Wow.
You've got a lot of fun things going on. Like, your list of things you're working on is so broad and so interesting. And I think a lot of health nerds would love to kind of live your life and do all the stuff you're doing.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's, I spent my whole career trying to figure out what I wanted to do and building towards this. And I do really feel fortunate. And every day it doesn't feel like work. I jump out of bed and I just do things. And I love that I'm building a community around me with Sapien, and all these great people are coming in. And, I want to just be like a big hub for anyone doing good things.
So I feel like if we're going to go through some kind of like logical trajectory on this interview, Laura, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the good place to start might be the Sapien diet, like the sort of the diet that you believe is optimal for humans. And how would you describe the Sapien diet?
Yeah, it's a nutrient dense, whole foods, high, embrace fat, focus on protein, minimize carbs, and don't always eat. So that was like 12 words, but it's kind of so many things. So people are like, is it paleo? No. Is it keto? No. Is it this? It's, also animal foods based. So I really like to focus on animal foods. I'm not scared to eat meat, and I'm not scared of fat. And I don't think we should be eating all the time. I love this condensed eating window. And just focus on nutrient density and kind of minimize anti-nutrients. I kind of learned about all these anti-nutrients. I got caught up in the whole like spinach and kale shake type of thing. And I was doing that every day for years. And I felt good initially, but I think I had problems with so many oxalates, and when I stopped doing that, I felt a lot better actually. And then I even had some like oxalate dumping things that I've talked to Sally Norton. If anyone's heard of her, she gets really into oxalates, and, your fingers peel and all these things happen. It's like, oh, wow, my fingers are peeling. So I kind of think I did have too many anti-nutrients in a supposed healthy diet. So now with Sapien, it's kind of zoning in on nose to tail animal foods. I eat a lot of seafood, eggs, all, liver and all that stuff. Then I eat a lot of fermented vegetables. I think they're great. You're getting probiotics, you're getting the anti-nutrients out, and you're opening up more of the nutrients. And, avocado, mushroom, just simple stuff. You just do whole foods, right? It's like the simplest thing. Just eat. It's funny because I try to, health coach my cousin who is a nurse, and she knows stuff. But, she's always trying to make like keto casseroles or, trying to do this really crazy stuff. I'm like, it's super simple. You just can get a piece of meat or a piece of fish and a few things on sides and you're done.
Does she make chaffles?
I don't know if she's gotten there. I tried it once, actually. It wasn't bad.
And
it wasn't bad.
I'm so tempted to try it. It's such a thing right now.
It's not bad at all. No, so I think it's great. It's fine. But I'm kind of just like, hey, why don't I just eat the eggs and eat the cheese?
Right.
I think it's fine though.
It's so did Sapien, the Sapien concept kind of come first for you? Because you've got a lot of things, Food Lies, the Peak Human podcast, sapien.org, your grass-fed food company. Do you mind walking us through sort of the trajectory about all this came about? Yeah.
I mean, it started with just study like ancestral diet. Like, I'm into that stuff, ancestral diets. Like, so that kind of got where the Sapien name comes from. Really, I was like, that's the ultimate name for me, is that it encompasses everything. This is how to be human. Right. So it was just, the path was all over though, because I started just making the film. Right. And that's how it really started, was just learning about, the ideal human diet, and testing it on myself. And then it's kind of like, okay, so I'm making this film. I'm talking to all these cool people, should have a podcast. And then I'm like, okay, well, now that I'm doing this, like, why don't I have a technology background? Why don't I just add this in? And then it was like, okay, I don't want to take advertisers onto my podcast. Why don't I just start my own meat company so that I can just be my own advertiser? So I guess that was the progression.
Wow. Okay. So you saw a movie that you felt wasn't telling the whole story, that was clearly biased and misleading, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this inspired you, based on your own experience, right, to, I'm going to make my own movie. And coming from kind of where you came from and working with Disney and that kind of stuff, you had a bit of a background in that. Yeah.
Kind of, yeah. And I also, because I was kind of fumbling around for what I should do with my life, I got into this little not acting, it was a sketch comedy world, and I was kind of producing and helping them produce stuff. Because, I've always kind of been pretty good at just organizing people and making things happen. Right. And so I was into this little Hollywood world and, acting and all that. And I was like, hey, yeah, I could make a movie. Yeah. I actually forgot this part too. I grew up doing film and editing and almost went to film school. So it did come full circle. I spent my whole life making stupid little films with my brother and cousin and doing all kinds of stuff like that. And in high school, took all the classes. So
I love it. So what I want to kind of draw a parallel to for coaches listening to this is, you had a problem. You found the answer and solution to your problem. You came across something in the environment that you felt was counter to your entire experience on how you got well, and thought, I want to do something about this. So you leveraged something you already know and have experience with and decided to run with it. Brian, are you a doctor?
No,
Are you a dietitian?
I am none of those.
None of those things. Yet there's nothing at all that told you, I shouldn't make a movie, even though that's what I know how to do, because I'm not a doctor. I'm not this. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want coaches listening to remember that, whatever your experience is and what you're looking for, you've got to find a way to get out there. And it might not be a movie. Maybe that's not your background. Maybe it's something else that's a strength of yours, that you have a passion for. And just listening to you talk, how taking that step towards using what you have that's familiar to you and trying to build on that has completely snowballed into all of these awesome projects that you're working on.
Yeah, it's so cool. I mean, actually, I started with social media too, and anyone can start with social media, right? So I just made an account called Food Lies, and I started with no followers, and I just kept doing it, and I posted every day, and I'd be reading, watching lectures, looking at studies, doing all the stuff to prepare for the film, and I would just post about it every day, and pretty soon I had a big following. So yeah, you can just do it. It's sometimes people are just like, oh, where do I start? You just do it. I don't know. It's like some people, I think it holds them back because they don't think that they can build something big, or I don't know. I went to a good high school in Hawaii where we were taught to think big, so maybe was part of it. Is I always was like, I could do anything. Yeah. Right. So maybe not everyone has that idea in their head.
Oh my gosh. I love that. I think all kids do, though. And at some point we outgrow it. Like, I literally remember Matthew. Matthew's my oldest. He's now 21. But when he was like 8, he legit thought his best professional opportunities were going to be professional baseball, a Jedi Knight, or like Spider-Man. Okay? So in his mind, worlds, like, he could do anything. All of those things are completely legitimate, and at some point we lose that. Fear sets in, and we start to cage ourselves in and I'm that's I guess a discussion for like a whole other day, but
or it could be even a school system discussion of just how your kind of soul is crushed, and they're just like, go be an accountant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Go back to when you were a kid, and what was it that lit you up, and back when that fear wasn't there, and just run with it.
Yeah. So Brian, I just wonder, like, the food and diet documentary world right now, it's a little bit like monkeys just like throwing poo at each other, just like So how do you plan to step into that space without just becoming another food documentary? Do you know what I mean? Like, are you taking steps to be sort of that voice of reason? Is your documentary going to be less sort of dogmatic, or how do you think it's going to resonate with people?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's good to think about all that stuff, and I don't think I thought about that right away. I was kind of on my own journey, and I discovered a lot of things along the way, and that you can't just do that. There's Dr. Sean Baker out there that people might have heard of, carnivore doctor, yelling at vegans all day and just being really aggressive. And maybe he's a friend of mine, but I don't think that's a great strategy. And so I've kind of learned that you have to meet people where they are I've talked to so many people actually. So when I want to make changes with people and when I want to change their mind, it would never work for me to start out saying they're wrong or they're stupid or they're, making mistakes and they're an idiot. It's more like, oh, hey, so you eat plant-based. Okay, that's really cool. So you're like focused on health and, you're really taking actions to do something. And maybe, everything we know about this isn't correct. You start questioning, and then you have to be really compassionate. And yeah, I've sort of learned a lot along the way and made mistakes, but that's really shaping the film now, is how to not make people feel stupid for what they believe in and show them a really clear logical progression of why we got things wrong. Like, why did we think fat was bad, that meat was bad? And in the movie we start with human evolution and we go the whole way and we kind of show the steps, and this is exactly what happened. This is when we started changing our opinion, and this is the bad science that we got. And so yeah, it's kind of this long, slow hand-holding process.
Yeah. And I'm sure that some people will still have their feathers ruffled. We don't believe in evolution. We don't believe humans evolved as omnivores. I think that's probably just comes along for the ride when you're in that space.
Yeah, that's going to happen. We're trying to be, as good as possible about that. And also we're kind of taking a more holistic view. We're kind of trying to show how food works in the body. So we're not exactly saying there's one diet that everyone has to follow. I mean, the Sapien diet is kind of a Sapien framework where you could be in the Sapien framework and be pescatarian, or you could be carnivore. It's all in the same realm of nutrient dense whole foods, and stuff like that. So we just believe you should have some animal foods, and then you can kind of choose your own ratio. Some people feel better with just a little bit of fish, and maybe they eat oysters and some nutrient dense foods, and they get a lot of B12 and a lot of vitamins and stuff from that, and then eat mostly plants, and that's fine. So that's kind of the message in the film as well. We're trying to say, hey, this is not an animal versus plant thing. This is let's not eat sugar, refined grains and oils, vegetable oils type of thing. And, let's find out what we have in common. And even there's a whole section at the end about regenerative farming and agriculture and the environment. And, that's a big story to people. And again, we don't want to ruffle feathers or, make people feel stupid for believing this kind of, I think it's a lot of kind of propaganda. Some of it is true. And yes, we don't want to be factory farming, but cows are not the problem. It's how we are raising them. And a lot of people don't know that all cows spend most of their life on pasture, and then most of them do go into a feedlot. But these confined feeding operations, they're not the torture that we see in a vegan propaganda. That's like some third world country that they, I mean, I've been to feedlots. They're hanging out. It's not the end of the world, but
no. Well, I actually think regenerative agriculture is a topic that health coaches need to begin to wrap their minds around, because the questions are coming in from clients. I'm getting them more and more as the plant-based propaganda is sort of put out there, which, to each their own, but my clients are asking me, like, what I thought that meat was bad for the planet. Like, I need to eat more plants to keep the planet safe. And so it's like, we have to understand regenerative agriculture, even as health coaches, because our clients are asking us those questions.
Yeah, it's huge. I've interviewed Dr. Frank Mitloehner, who's a PhD at UC Davis. And if anyone wants to listen to that Peak Human podcast, Dr. Frank Mitloehner, it's awesome. Dispels a lot of these myths. Yeah, I just try to I did one with Gabe Brown. He's a regenerative farmer. He has a giant 5,000 acre farm. He's doing this at a large scale. So it is possible. And I mean, I could talk for hours about this stuff. I'm not the expert per se, but there's a whole section of the film about it. And, you know, every single argument they have, I can show you how it breaks down. If we want to talk ethics, we want to talk the soil, if we want to talk CO2 and methane, those all break down when you actually look at them. So yeah, I don't know if we want to talk about a few of them, but just know that there's resources out there that yet, yeah.
I think the ones that I keep hearing from my clients are the CO2, the water usage. Honestly, nobody's talking about soil, and they should be, but clients are like, oh, but the CO2 emissions and all the water it takes to raise livestock. Those are the two that I'm hearing the most.
Yeah. So I guess the two biggest counterpoints to that, the water. So most of the water in those calculations is from rainwater. So it's really deceiving that they're using the rainwater that naturally falls on the fields, and that shouldn't count. And it also, they use for these calculations, they're not good calculations. They're very biased towards their view. So they'll say, oh, okay, well, if it takes this much water to grow corn, and then they just say, okay, there's 1,000 acres of corn for one cow, and they're not doing the math correctly. The cow is mostly on grass, eating grass from the rain. That shouldn't count at all. So then they're just making these multiplications like, okay, well, this cow needs this much food over its life, so let's just multiply out. So then it seems like this insane amount of water, and it's not. They're just calculating how much water goes to feed corn and then doing some bad math. And even another problem is all that corn is not just grown for the cows.
That's right.
What most people don't know is the cows are amazing. They're recyclers. They're using parts of the corn that we can't use. So most of the corn is grown for ethanol. Actually, we can make, corn ethanol out of it, and then they can eat the leftovers. It's a perfect system, really. Or there's distiller's grain. So the grain, it's leftover grain product that animals use, and they upcycle the nutrients. And it's actually an amazing system where we're getting more nutrient dense foods and high quality bioavailable protein from them eating waste, basically non-edible human waste. Almost 88%, I think it's 87.9% of food a cow eats in their life is not edible to humans. So that's huge. So you can remember that one. Just call it 88%. It's not edible to humans. And here's the other good one is, well, there's some graphics at the sustainable dish. Diana Rogers, she's great. She's making another film called Sacred Cow. She has some great graphics about the water and stuff like that. But also I interviewed Dr. Sarah Place, who's another researcher, PhD on all this animal agriculture. She pointed to me a study that showed that cows give for the life of cows, the amount of protein they eat, they double the amount of usable protein to humans, which is really crazy because in the vegan films, they'll try to say something completely opposite. But when you look, this is a scientific peer reviewed study. And when you factor in there's something called a PDCAS, or there's a DIAS score. These are two scoring systems for the, bioavailability and usability of protein. If you factor that in, which you have to, because we can't get all the protein from a grain or, from different plant foods. It's not bioavailable to us. If you factor that in, they actually upcycle and double on average the amount of protein that they eat to what they supply us.
Miracles.
They are miracles. Cows are nature's miracles. Seriously.
Well, one of the other things that Diana Rogers is often talking about that I think is interesting, and I guess it's another thing that comes up, is the land usage for ruminant animals. But she has this, I don't have any of these statistics on the tip of my fingers like you do, but a lot of the grazing lands that are available for ruminants to graze on are not hospitable for plant agriculture anyway.
It's in the 80s too, I believe. Yeah, I don't have all these memorized, but it's a very true. Oh, maybe that's 60. I don't know. Either way, it's well over half that is not available. And we went to some of these farms for the Food Lives film to show this. And we went up actually into Canada to multiple farms and showed that this land, the soil was, a centimeter thick in some places, and it was just rocky, and there's like these, it was just on a bed of a shield. It was called the Canadian Shield, and And so for one farmer, they're like, we can't grow anything else. This is the only thing we can do. And we have grazing cows, and it's amazing. We're using all this land, and they're not just using it's actually a good use of the land. If they weren't there, they wouldn't be adding manure to the soil and, keeping this whole process going. It's so obvious when you think about it, all these, North America before humans were here, just all the buffalo, there's 100 million buffalo estimated, and there was grasses everywhere. It's this whole process where they eat the grass, they stimulate it, they fertilize it, and this is natural process for millions of years. And then we came along and ruined all the soil, ruined everything. So cows on land is good. And then we also went to another farm where the woman, she grazed her cattle in the woods. It's like, you can't grow crops here. They were like walking throughout the trees, eating like 30 different kinds of vegetation, super healthy. Yeah.
It's got my wheels turning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what about the farts? What's all this about?
The cat.
The farts thing. I mean, that's the way my clients they don't even use CO2. The farts.
The method. Yeah, they don't even get it. That's so funny because for one thing, it's mostly from belching. Most of the methane comes from the front, and this is also. I love this kind of statement. Cows aren't alchemists. Okay, they don't just make methane out of nothing. Okay, this methane, and which eventually turns into CO2, but methane is a bad greenhouse gas, comes from somewhere. So the easiest way I describe this, or I had a visual picture of this, you can imagine there's a cycle that nature loves cycles, that has harmonious cycles. That's how nature works. And cows eat grass. So the CO2, the carbon comes from the air, the grass uses it to grow, plus photosynthesis. Cows eat it. Then they take that CO2 and methane is CH4, and they eventually burp it out. And then it goes up into the air, and it's actually a short-lived gas. So methane take 10 years and it'll degrade back into CO2 and come back. So it's a cycle that all is above ground. So you can imagine this perfect little cycle, and it goes from the air to the grass, to the cow, back to the air, to the grass. Okay. Then there's the fossil fuels is the other side of the story. So now we have fossil fuels in the ground. So it's all this carbon that's been locked in the ground for millions of years. And then we pull it out of the ground, burn it in all of the ways we do industrial, everything, which is the lion's share of all, it's 80-something% of the CO2 comes from all these different industries based on fossil fuel. And then that goes up into the air, and CO2 is a 1,000-year cycle. Okay, so that stays around for 1,000 years before it's like the half-life, right? How long it takes to break down. So now we have this one-way street where all the carbon, we're taking it from the grounds, fossil fuels, and going straight up to the atmosphere. Then we have the cows doing their little thing with their natural cycle. And I don't understand how this is even an argument. Well, once you get to know the actual facts about this, it doesn't even make sense.
Right. Yeah.
So how far along are you? Like, where are you in the process for Food Lies? And like, what stage are you in?
We've got it all filmed. We're editing. We're making something. We're trying to make something really special. I was back home in Hawaii with my director making this intro. We're trying to just make the most beautiful, powerful, high production film possible to not just blend into every other film. So we're doing our 4.5-minute intro is 130 shots that we planned for months and shot. It's going to be awesome.
Ooh.
Yeah, we're working with illustrators now, animators. We're doing infographics. We're just, every minute counts. Every second of this film counts. We're getting every word perfect. And that's where we are right now. And yeah.
Oh, goosebumpy.
Yeah.
You
so excited.
You kind of hinted that you have a pretty star-studded guest list. So here's some of the guests that you interviewed.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I already mentioned Mark Sisson. That was, we have Jeff Volix. He's a researcher. He's one of these OG researchers. We have Dr. Tim Noakes. He's from South Africa. He's kind of a legend. Nina Teicholz, Gary Taubes. We're getting Ben Bickman. We have Dr. Ted Naiman. I love Dr. Ted Naiman. Asim Malhotra from the UK is coming in next week, and we're filming with him. We have Joel Salatin, amazing regenerative farmer.
I love him. Yeah.
We have Dr. Bill Schindler, is amazing anthropologist and archaeologist. We have Dr. Craig Stanford, who's this famous primatologist talking about how primates actually eat a lot of meat. It's kind of interesting. He kind of took over for Jane Goodall. He works at USC in her lab.
Oh.
And it's really interesting. He's like, yeah, they go to great lengths to get meat. Like it's like they're not oh man, so many people. I could probably list like 15 other people. I think some of these, we have so many good expert interviews that some of them might not even make it in.
Wow.
So interestingly, so you started this movie. How did you get all these people to interview? How did you introduce yourself?
Yeah.
Did people know you ahead of time? Because
it was a slow process. Yeah. This also could be kind of a good takeaway of you just got to do it, right? You got to take some action on your own. What I did, I just made a website. Here's my big secret. I just made a website, which anyone can do these days. There's all these tools, you can go to Wix or Squarespace or whatever, just make a website. And then I just started emailing people like, hey, I'm making this film. Here it is. And, it had all the information and like, okay, let's talk. And it kind of snowballs. And, I just got on the phone with some people and then they recommending someone else and it just keeps going.
Awesome. Well, that's great advice. Just start doing, you touched on that earlier. And honestly, anybody who comes on this podcast and is doing anything successfully, that seems to be the secret sauce, is we just started doing stuff, but that's a heavy ask for some people. So you must have had a pretty solid outline on this website so that people who visited it would know that you're onto something pretty legit.
Yeah, I actually haven't even changed it. It's in the same website I put up 2 years ago. Maybe it's 2.5 by now. And it's just, I kind of just tell the story. It's kind of like 3 steps. It's like what is our history? Where do we come from? This is what we used to eat. And then it's where we went wrong. And then it's like, what does the new science say? So it's kind of this, hey, like, and that still is just the core of the film and how we're going to do it. And yeah, it's not that complicated, really. It's kind of, I love this kind of ancestral world. It's kind of like, hey, we're just trying to go back to the way we used to do things. We're not inventing something insane.
No.
Like this is just what we've always done.
Yeah. The world's oldest fad diet.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I just, and as far as the willingness, so you never know who's going to say yes. That's kind of my takeaway from this, right? Now, you never know who's going to say yes. And now you're at this point 2.5 years later where you've got so many amazing interviews. You don't even know if you can use it all, so just sort of move forward. And I got to think this really provided a solution to something that many of us, at least in our little ancestral realm, knew there was a need for, because there's a lot of people with another agenda pushing a lot of ideas that aren't true. So there's a lot of different movies and documentaries out there that are pushing a lot of old science. Talked about the new research, right? Pushing a lot of the old research and trying to make a case for something that fundamentally clearly cannot be true because we're not getting better. We're continuing.
Yes.
And I remember literally saying, God, someone's got to make a movie. Someone's got to make a movie to combat this. And then Pete Evans came out with The Magic Pill. So that was great. Yours is coming out. Diana's will be coming out. So now we're going to have these really well done films that kind of tell another side of the story, which I think is fantastic. And I think the people that you reached out to thought, all right, finally, someone's making this movie. I'm in,
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's so needed. And I think there's a couple more. So hopefully we keep going on this and everyone does it from their own angle. And yeah.
It'd be really nice if health consumers could just be less bewildered and pulled in so many directions. But I guess that's a big ask.
Well, that's what I try to do.
We were joking about chaffles earlier, and the chaffle gate to me is indicative of the fact that, okay, so like we belong to a keto group that's affiliated with, gently affiliated with our school, and the chaffle situation in that Facebook group is like off the chain. But people are posting their chaffles and people are arguing about chaffles, and what it all bubbles up to me is like people are just completely confused now about some of these ancestral topics are just getting kind of overly micromanaged and kind of overly fussy. And I think that bubble's going to burst. I'm hopeful that the bubble's going to burst and people are going to be like, okay, you know what? Let's tap the brakes. How are humans designed to eat? I hope.
That's so interesting. Yeah. So part of the goal of the movie is to make sense of everything. You know, like you have a health magazine and each month it says the opposite almost, or like, you know, each outlet will say the opposite. So it's like, let's make sense of nutrition. But then again, people will just say, oh, well, this is just Food Live's one take on it. Even though I'm trying to take the most unbiased, all encompassing approach, it's still just, oh, that's just one film. I got to listen to the other one. So that sucks. But yeah, I think the kind of the unifying theories of nutrition that I'd like to talk about and bring up is just whole foods. The simplest is just processed foods. And so I can kind of see this chaffles type of thing where it's like, oh, but you know, it's like kind of like a process, you know what I mean? You're trying to mimic a processed food, or it is somewhat processed, I guess. But I mean, it's really 2 ingredients.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and like cheese and eggs, but
yeah.
So it's, yeah, that what I've found is the level of processing is a big thing. Right. So no one's really talking about like the actual level of processing, like the level of alteration of foods changes how it interacts with your gut, and the different hormones and all the different interactions that happen in your body change with the amount of processing. There's a great guy named Gabor Erdosi. He's not a professional scientist or, you know, like a PhD. He works professionally in the food processing industry, actually. I would check out his stuff if you're interested. It's like, it's so interesting how the level of processing matters. So you can take the same food and grind it up, and then you'll have more of a glycemic response, or, you know, you have more of a blood sugar and insulin response to that, even though it's the same food. And that the one that stood out to me the most was there was a rat study where they had this rat chow, and if you eat it whole, the rats maintained weight. But if they ground it up, the same food, they got obese.
Wow.
Very cool. And so he started researching into it, and there's, you know, all kinds of studies about it. So that kind of led me down this path. Is like, hey, the level of food processing, like keeping food intact, matters. And even with vegetable matter. So the difference between, I mentioned the kale shake, spinach shake type of thing, you breaking down the cell wall of those plants actually makes it worse for you. And it'll make it absorb faster in your gut, and then different hormones will be released, and you'll have a different, you know, blood sugar response to that. So the kind of unifying theory of nutrition is just keep foods intact, eat them in the most unaltered state. And so even with meat, you know, just think about the difference between, it goes down the line of like how much you can overeat per se. So like raw beef, then there's like a steak, then there's like cooked hamburger, you know, ground beef, and then there's seasoned cooked ground beef. And each step you go along the line, you're going to eat more of it. And it's going to be a little bit different in your body. So I'm not saying ground beef is bad, but I mean, if someone gave me a plate of like super delicious seasoned ground beef, I could eat a lot of that compared to just a fat steak. And there's a lot to it of just, and so with each type of food, the level of alteration matters. And the people who are successful in any diet, in any culture, in any time of history, ate foods in their unaltered form. Right. So it's like, that kind of makes sense. Oh, well, why do plant-based diets work? It's, well, they're eating whole foods, and they're, you know, the ones that don't work are eating the fake vegan snacks or whatever.
Yeah. I actually just recently got into an Instagram argument. So that was pretty fun, but there's a kind of a influencer thought leader person who's in the flexible dieting space, who shall remain nameless.
I think I know. Okay.
Yeah. And posted in mockery, I'm actually looking at it right now. In mockery, he posted, somebody had shared this concept around, like, as soon as I stopped counting calories and started counting chemicals, I never had to go on a diet again. So this person had posted about, you know, the folly of processed foods. And then this if it fits your macros thought leader was like debunking this, like, you know, chemicals, schmemicals kind of thing. And I posted, I said, is it really such an asinine concept to consider just not eating as much processed food? Is it really worth trolling this person? I just asked that question. I had no skin in the game, just like, what is this really the hill to die on? Oh my God, I just got taken down by the followers of this person. Like, oh, apples are chemicals, water's a chemical. It's like, guys.
Wow. Yeah. People professionally miss points on social media. That's what I noticed. It's like their whole life is missing the point, or yeah, just going, or they're just trying to fit their theories or, you know, back up their way of eating. But I have a couple things with this. Is one is, I don't know we can say his name or not, doesn't matter, but someone just told me he works out 2 to 3 hours a day. So why are we listening to someone who is not normal at all? Like, I would not take diet advice from Michael Phelps. He famously was eating like 10 pizzas. You know what? He was ridiculous. He's like, oh yeah, I eat like 5 pizzas and 5 sub sandwiches.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, this guy, and he's in, as you know who it is, he's in like the bodybuilding space, competition prep space, powerlifting space. And it's like, that's not normal people. That's if you're a normal person, do not heed that advice.
Yes. Most people need to lose weight, and most people, aren't working out 2-3 hours a day, and everything is different. Everything is different. I work with people in the clinic. I work with a doctor, and we treat people. And the number one thing, well, with most people in America, is losing weight. And the number one thing is satiety. So this is my favorite topic of all time. I'm writing a book about it, satiety is very tied to level of processing. In the simplest, if you just want to explain it, it's like the most unaltered foods are the most satiating foods. And as soon as you start messing with them, the satiety goes down. So that's what this guy's missing, is that, yes, you need to eat more calories because you're working out 2 to 3 hours a day. And it's okay if you can have some of these processed foods, but most people can't. They need to focus on satiety. They need to eat protein. They need to eat, that's why I'm the Sapien. It's like, I'm not scared of protein. Protein is very satiating. It not only does it have a high like thermic effect of food to eat, but it also is very satiating. And we need, it's just different discussions. I don't know why we shouldn't. Yeah.
My average client is, other than the people that come to my gym, my average client is lucky to find 20 minutes a few days a week. They're that busy. They're moms that they're running all over the place. A lot of them are working moms, and they need to find 20 or 30 minutes to squeeze in somewhere to get some sort of activity. She does not have the time to spend 2 or 3 hours in the gym, right? And same thing with a lot of the dads, because a lot of times it's couples that I'm dealing with that travel and all these other things. So to try to follow a bodybuilding diet, you're absolutely right about how highly nuanced all of this is, right? And Aaron, I know who you're talking about too. And I don't know why I even follow him. Probably just to torture myself, because half of what he says just pisses me off because he's so nasty.
Yeah,
he's really helpful. Well,
what's weird is I had him on my podcast a long time ago, right after he went on Joe Rogan. We have to just say his name because people are very curious. This guy, Lane Norton.
Right.
He went on Joe Rogan, and then I got introduced to him via Dom D'Agostino. Had him on we had a nice call. Then I had him on my podcast, had a nice discussion, and we agreed on a lot of things. But then someone tags him in something that I said, and he came out just attacking me, like calling me an idiot. I was like, whoa, like we had a nice podcast. I don't really know what's going on.
Oh my, too much pre-workout. Okay. So, it's all good. It's all good. But it just, for me, it's like, I thought we were all in agreement that processed food was not good, but apparently not.
Apparently not. Well, if it's your macros, if you can squeeze it in, that's the main takeaway is if you are burning 5,000 calories a day, you can eat processed foods because you have this big caloric, bank account, or you know what I mean? You have this budget that's way bigger than most people.
I am going to be really curious about his opinion in like 5 years.
That's what I was going to say.
Right? Like, when people hit 40s-ish, just how forgiving their bodies really are with processed foods.
Exactly.
I don't care how much energy you're expending.
Well, he's not like a slim guy either. No. I don't know. Like, yeah. And also even if your caloric budget can fit processed foods, there's long-term problems that are going to arise. So yes, I think those will be problems in the future.
Yeah. Maybe he's just been lucky enough so far. Like we all had a health situation that we transformed with our diet. So we're maybe, we're coming at this from a different place, but if you've never had any health problems that you can pinpoint to a dodgy diet, then you probably do. It probably, as long as it fits the macros, who cares?
Right.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Let's quit gossiping about him. So you mentioned, Brian, that you're working in a clinic as a health coach. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. It's funny because I had a friend from UCLA, became a doctor. He did the whole path of, prescribing medicines and, knowing nothing about nutrition, and the whole normal story everyone's heard. And I worked my way in. I kept talking to him. He kept seeing, leading by example, and he finally completely bought in, changed his whole life, and changed his whole practice. And now I work with him, and we developed the Sapien diet and the framework, and the working on technology, and are doing it in the clinic. So it's a hard road, for one thing, because you have to go against the medical system, and it's like, how do you get reimbursed for this? And like doing it as an actual doctor is pretty hard, and we're trying to be working out creative ways for me to actually get reimbursed. Or is it you have to do cash payments, because most insurance won't cover it. But if there's a certain BMI, we can do some health coaching is covered by certain insurances. So it's a bit complicated. It's really cool though for me to be in there working with patients in a clinical setting, alongside him. And I'm getting tons of experience, and seeing a lot of success, and just learning about people. Most people don't know what it's like to work with people who need to lose weight or have chronic illness. And one last thing with Lane Norton is, I think I brought it up with him, is like, you're not working with people who have these problems. You're not working with people with food addiction. You're not working with people who are 100 pounds overweight who don't lift. And it's completely different. So I'm learning all about that, and it's really helping the film.
Good.
Yeah,
That's interesting. I didn't know that BMI was the deciding factor as to whether.
Yeah. Certain BMIs you can get a certain, like I think it's like once every 4 weeks to 6 weeks, you can get a covered visit.
Okay, so if you get these people coming in with their high BMIs, or regardless, where they're coming in to see you, and you're generally encouraging the Sapien diet, what have you found is the hardest couple things for clients to take on board? What do they have the hardest time with?
Yeah, most people are pretty open to the ideas of this. I kind of give them some rambling thoughts on how everything's wrong. Some people, that's a hurdle that I can get through with people. Cholesterol's bad. You know what I mean? The whole cholesterol story. Okay, so if they buy in, the hardest thing though is getting over that first hump of like the first 3 weeks. I'd like to get them fat adapted. Maybe you shouldn't start right away, where you can start. Let's cut one thing this week. Let's just cut sugar, or like half your sugar. Then we'll work our way down half. Let's reasonable goals. But like getting over the hump of really getting fat adapted, which I forget is hard. I mean, I did it years ago, and it was like, hey man, you just have to be strict with yourself for 3 weeks. You can't mess around, really. And you have to just do it. And then, you might get the keto flu, and then, you've got to get some electrolytes and kind of set people up for that. But working with my friends, working with family, working with health coach patients, clients, it's all the same is that 3 weeks of just being strict. It's like life happens. Like, oh, well, I went to this party, and then there was this wedding thing. And it's hard. I mean, I agree with that. I'm like, it's not easy.
Yeah, I do remember. But I always tell my clients, it only takes 3 weeks. Like, if you, in 3 weeks from now, you're going to be a metabolically different person.
Yeah, you're so right about how life happens, because that's what I spend a lot of, I don't know about you, Erin, but in my private practice, I spend a lot of time with my clients and helping them think through how they can handle that better next time, right? Or what's coming up this week that we can kind of troubleshoot ahead of time, to try to be prepared for. And working through how my clients can tap into their own strengths and their own resources to overcome these things that seem like it's going to be a problem, and trying to get like ahead of that picture a little bit. So if we know one of the stumbling blocks is going to be low energy in this kind of keto flu, how can we help our clients leverage what the things they're already good at, and the things that drive confidence for them to be prepared for that,
I like that.
things to work on. And because that's where the rubber meets the road. I mean, they've got the information, right? You said they bought in. Now it's working with them to overcome the challenges we know that they're going to get. And we talk with our coaches all the time about having this niche market. And part of the reason why you need a niche market is so you can develop a targeted program, right? That is designed for you to be able to coach someone through this because you've been there. And once we've helped the similar client, maybe it's obese or metabolically deranged, or they have metabolic syndrome, a lot of these people kind of run into the same challenges. They have a lot of the same issues, and we can kind of hone our own skills as coaches as to how to help that client over that hurdle and help them sort of pre-experience it. So then when it does arrive, that's what she was talking about, I get it. And I'm going to get,
I like that. Yeah. Preparing then. Yeah. Cause if it's a surprise, then if you're not prepared for it, it doesn't work. And it's so interesting how mental it is. That's what I've learned a lot about. And so I kind of break it down. There's only two reasons you kind of go astray, or you gain weight, or you, whatever. It's you made the wrong, well, if you have the correct information, that is. Once you have the correct information, so you either made a wrong food choice or it was a mental choice. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like satiety, but too. It's like, so it's either you didn't eat satiating foods, so you were hungry and you overate, or you were full and you made a mental choice to eat too much, or to, you know what I mean? So many people have issues with food around stress, or around depression, or around social interactions or habits. And so you got to hit it from both sides. So it's the food choice. It's like, how can I eat satiating foods? How can I be full? Or even if I figured that out, then I know people, I tried with my family members, and they're like just eating when they're full. So then you have to attack this mental side too. It's like, how do you not eat all the time, even though when you're full?
Yeah. I mean, the satiety thing is my favorite thing to talk about too. And I actually have told my clients that I think satiety is the cure for boredom eating and emotional eating a lot of the time. But
100%.
I mean, and because the thing with full is different than satiated.
Exactly.
That's the thing, right? So cellularly, the cells are like, we're good. That's satiety is how I describe it. Like, your cells are fed, you're going to be able to ignore the cravings for whatever ice cream or whatever you're going to go eat. But if you're filling up your stomach on non-nourishing, unsupportive foods, whatever you want to call them, then you can just keep on eating.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And there's temporary, it's the temporary and the lasting. You're right. A lot of the foods just, I'm not anti-plants, but I mean, a lot of this like whole fiber thing to me is more like, that's temporary. You can be temporarily full. I'm not saying that it's bad or it's impossible. But it's like, you're bloated. Oh, but it's kind of like, if you want to be full, you need some animal protein in there.
Yeah.
You need some fat or animal, you know what I mean? You need some like real fat. Yeah. You can't just rely on volume. I see these vegan memes. They're like, it's kind of the cross section of a stomach. And it's like, oh, the oil, it's like 800 calories of oil. Then it was 800 calories of meat, and there's 800 calories of vegetables. I'm like, for one, who eats 800 calories of oil? Like, we're not just eating oil. Like, this doesn't make any sense. I'm just going to drink oil for a meal. And then I'm like, that 800 calories of meat and animal foods is going to keep me full for way longer than your giant salad that has no protein in it. So
that graphic is so backward to me. It's like, I think they're making the wrong point here. I'm not sure. Like, whenever I look at it, I'm like, I
don't get it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I'm really curious. So we've talked about the Sapien diet. We talked about the movie. There's a book coming out as well alongside the movie. Correct?
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to figure out, I think I'm just doing a separate book that's kind of based around these satiety concepts. And, I
love that.
I haven't really talked about it publicly much. Not that it's a secret, but I just,
I have a question about satiety. And this, I guess, is kind of for both of you, because some of the things I find is they might feel like trying to check in. I'm really not hungry, but for some reason I still want to eat. And one of the things I think I don't spend enough time on is talking about satiety around just life in general and time spent doing things you love doing. Are you unfulfilled, right?
Yeah.
Or are you still hungry for something else?
That's interesting.
Not food.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah, like life satiety.
We're using food to replace that. What is it?
That's that's the mental side though. That's what I'm saying. So it's hard to write this book because we started going down this path. I have a co-writer, and then we're like, hey, this is going beyond food. We're talking about mental issues. We're talking about, depression and old trauma. And you guys have heard of a guy, Dr. Tro. He's an obesity specialist physician who lost 100 pounds himself. And he's like, hey, 75% of my patients come in with mental trauma. Very, you know, these obese patients come in with past issues, and a lot of it has, and the food issues are around that. And you know, what's interesting too is a lot of people, I get like 1 million DMs a month. It's crazy, but these people tell me I stopped drinking alcohol once I started doing this nutrient dense diet. They're fulfilled. You know what I mean? You're trying to fill a void by drinking too much. You're trying to fill a void by eating too much. And once you fill that void with nutrient dense foods, you are happy and you are satisfied.
I've had clients do that too, where they just stopped throwing vodka in their kombucha. I don't know why you would do that in the first place, but so the way when I talk about satiety, because it's a cornerstone of my program, actually my coaching program as well. But for example, I had a coaching call with a client yesterday. And so for me, I think the idea of satiety and how it presents in your body and in your life is very hard to articulate. It's almost like you have to kind of experience it to know. And so what she said on the call yesterday was, she said, I had a really long day. I was heading home around 10 p.m. And normally I would go through a drive-through because I had a long day and it's 10 p.m. and not really hungry, but I'm going to go through the drive-through. And she said, yesterday, I just was like, no, I'm not going to go through the drive-through. And she said, I've never actually talked myself out of it before, but something made me talk myself out of going through the drive-through. And so in my opinion, that's how satiety can worm its way into your mental state, because she had been adequately fed by nutrient-dense satiating foods all day, such that she could drive past the drive-through without having to white knuckle it, without having to like talk herself off the ledge. She was just like, yeah, I'm not going to go to the drive-through. It's the first time she's ever driven past the drive-through in her recent memory. And I chalk that up to satiating food.
Yeah, no, that's what, that inner voice is crazy, and everyone knows it. And I've like dealt with that too, and I've seen it change over the years. And it's like I always wanted to eat dessert, and then I could talk myself out of it now. And
like hunger's quieter. Your hunger shows up more quietly, and you can kind of like ignore it or not. But anyway, I just think it's such a powerful tool. And I love that it's your crusade, because whenever I listen to your podcast and you start talking about it, I'm just like, yes, more people need to understand satiety. It's such oh, I shouldn't say game changer. It's a life changer.
It's yes. Don't promote though.
That's hilarious.
It's funny. Well, if anyone wants to know, I made a whole film debunking the game changers. So you can find that on YouTube.
Yeah. A lot of people did debunk that. Well, do you think your documentary is going to get debunked? Are you prepared for the debunking?
That's funny, because that's what I think about every day is how can I make a undebunkable film where of course vegans will try, but I mean really like fact check every single thing and be like, don't make any outrageous statements. And I think that's what we can do. We can do that where I'm sure vegans will make videos about it, but I don't think anyone will have a credible debunking.
Gotcha. We'll see.
Yeah, I love it. The debunk of the debunk. We were talking about that one day. I felt like that thing came out and wow.
Oh, the hours we wasted on that. Oh my goodness.
So your Peak Human podcast, you've been interviewing people that were part of your movie. Is that how you started that?
Yeah. That's how I started. So I started getting access to all these great people. And then, again, it just snowballed. And then I love this where, once you get a certain point, then I just say, oh, look who's on my show. And then I can get like big researchers. And I love talking to just all the PhDs. And I got like Dale Bredesen, just, awesome Alzheimer's researcher. And I just try to get the most interesting people doing the real research or doctors and kind of pick their brains.
Yeah. Well, I loved your Ted Nyman interview. He's such a cool dude. Okay. And then you also have the meat company. You also touched on a technology piece that you're building.
Yeah, that's really huge. And I hope people listening are, want to involve everyone who's a health coach. And I have a waiting list actually of all these different health coaches and health practitioners waiting for this technology. So if anyone's heard of vertahealth.com they're a great company. They're Jeff Volek and Steve Finney are, part of the main founders that all based on the science, and they're helping reverse type 2 diabetes with lifestyle and diet. And so we're kind of copying them a bit. Last time I saw Jeff at a conference, I'm like, I'm going to compete with you. I'm coming after you. So we want to build this Sapien technology that helps health coaches, doctors, whatever health practitioner, the health coach, and the patient all work together using technology so they can communicate and they can, sorry, I hope it's not super loud. There's always a lawnmower right outside my window when I try to do a podcast. So we want to get all these people connected and stay in touch, stay accountable, and then also use technology and wearables to track them, right? And so not only can you input your own data, or we can input, say that your cholesterol and your different health markers, but you can also use a ketone meter, a continuous glucose monitor, you can use Fitbit, you can use the Oura Ring. We're going to plug all these in so that you can track as a patient, as a client, they can do all that tracking. But then also, I think it's great is that they can stay accountable, even if no one is even looking at it. There's this whole thing of, if you're being watched, if you're being held accountable, you'll do things. And I want to track their meals in a way. I don't like counting calories. I don't like all this like insane tracking. I think people should do it maybe in the beginning, right? If I don't know how your style of health coaching, there's all different styles where it's maybe in the beginning, we need to track everything, right? Benchmark. And we need to learn about food and how many, grams of fat or how many grams of carbs does this have? Because most people just don't know that naturally. Right. So yes, but then later on, let's do this more naturally. Let's not count every single thing we eat. And, with a nutrient dense diet, you don't have to count everything you eat. You're naturally satiated. So anyway, I want to make a simple food tracking system, and we can track when you ate and just a general, what you ate. And then we can know, how about let's not eat for 16 hours, right? Like, and then we can record all this in an app, and you can see these trends. You can see, I did this 16-hour fast, or this is, I can see my weight going down. It's connected to a smart scale, or all these things will be on a dashboard, and then you'll be able to communicate with your health coach. So I've been developing this for a long time. I'm finally getting some more funding and some more great doctors to work with that are help pushing this. So it's not done yet, but we're almost done. And yeah, we're kind of just going to start it in our clinic in Los Angeles and do it as like a pilot program, and then roll it out to anyone who wants to use it. So I want to open it up to any doctor. If there's a doctor out there, Dr. Ted Naiman, if he wants to use it with his patients, he can use it. Right. And then if you're a health coach, and then he could have, like, he doesn't have health coaches, right? So he just works in a normal clinic, and he has 12 minutes with someone. He works that normal. I love him because it's like, hey, I'm just a normal doctor. I just work. I tell people I've changed lives, but I only have 13 minutes at a time. But he still gets it done. But maybe he would need some health coaches to continue on. Everyone listening knows how important that element is, but Ted's not going to do it. But if he outsources that, and anyone listening could be a health coach for Dr. Ted Naiman, if, and we could facilitate that. Or the other end would be, or just a health coach can go on their own and use this on their own and get their own clients and have a little private practice and have this technology to back them. And they wouldn't pay for it unless they use it. I kind of don't like these things where it's like, oh, there's this huge upfront cost, or there's big it's just, no, if you get a client and you charge them, hey, it's like, I have this health coaching thing. It's like $20 a month for this extra tech, or you build it into the big program price. So it's like, this is, you work with me, it's $400 a month, but you get this program. Then that's the only time that we'll take money as a company is if you're already making money off of it.
So I see like so many applications for this, obviously everything that you just discussed, but I see an opportunity here to build. So one of the things we were talking about as an organization a long time ago is this idea of like building a consortium, right, of professionals that can all work together and leverage each other. So I could see this being a fantastic central place where you can have doctors, right, that want to be able to track this stuff and use this software, but then is like, you know what, this particular patient's not particularly great with just self-accountability. And I don't have the bandwidth to do it. I need to find this person a health coach. And if the doctor doesn't want to have to hire health coaches on staff, it's where can I go within this framework, someone who knows how to use this technology that I can then refer out to. So we have the ability for, doctors and clients and coaches to connect. But the other thing I think would be really cool is an opportunity for, to your point, like coaches that have their own private practice, and then bring their own doctors on, because one of the,
Mhm.
depending on where you live, there's going to be certain things that are just outside your scope of practice that you're going to need a licensed practitioner to
Mhm.
really take the lead on. And then the coach, so
Yeah, yeah.
there's so many like practical uses of a technology like that. So you envision it as an app. Is that what you said? On your
Yeah, yeah. So it's mainly a mobile app that, and it's kind of like a dashboard. It's the main function is wearables and a dashboard and communication.
Okay.
So chat. But you're right. It can happen both ways with the doctors and the health coaches and finding each other. And I kind of am actually building this network consortium, whatever you want to call it. I have this huge waiting list. You can join at sapien.org, but it will be one day. Now that I think about it, maybe the online resource would be this connection platform, like you're saying. So it's either doctors wanting to find health coaches or health coaches wanting to find doctors. That's ultimately, this is interesting. I haven't thought about it exactly, that this would be sort of part of our offering, would be this connection service in a way.
Yeah, right. If you've got a doctor who, especially because there are more and more, in particular, like functional medicine practitioners that are doing a lot more online, like
Yeah, yeah.
and so they may have clients in another state and that they need a health coach. We were talking with one of our own doctors, Dr. Bo Nichoy, who's a gastric bypass surgeon, and not all of his clients are in their backyard. So the health coaches that he has in his office won't work. And he was saying, I would love to be able to tap into health coaches that are in Alabama or some of the other surrounding states that are local to my client, that are my patient, that I might be able to find some help for. I mean, what a great leverage.
It's so great. I mean, these days there's no real reason you need to be in person. I mean, some things need to be done in person, obviously, but other than that, you don't really need to. And I think it's more about finding someone that you really agree with, or that's, maybe it could be local. Maybe, it's just because there's a different mindset in the Alabama area, and to find someone locally there. But I mean, they don't have to be in your town. They could be just nearby. And we've thought about this, is connecting the right people to you. You have to have choices to fit. You can't just grab any random health coach and just plug them in.
Right.
It's more like, oh, this is this person and this is what they believe in, or even the demographics. It's like, oh, I need a woman because a woman that knows me, something like that.
Cool. Right. I love that. But there would be a place where a health coach or a doctor could submit a profile of who they are and what their practice is like. And I mean, it'd be kind of neat.
It's going to happen.
I'm so excited.
That's
wow,
great.
Good for you.
That's great. And I'm sure the Verta Health folks weren't bummed that you're going to compete with them, because I think we all have a I guess a dream of eradicating that totally unnecessary chronic illness, that particular one, or any of the totally unnecessary chronic illnesses.
Well, Now, everyone has an abundance mindset in this world. I've noticed that, they're like, Jeff Volek's like, hey, let's go. More the merrier. Everyone, all these other filmmakers, Vinny Tortorich is a guy who made a film, Diana Rogers, like Pete Evans. They're just all like, what can I do to help? More the merrier. Yeah. Let's do this.
Yeah. Awesome. Wow. What an interesting fellow you are. I have one final question for you. Like, how do you spend your days? You just like get up and just devour research, or like, are you a finger on the pulse of everything at all time, or how do you keep on top of this?
Wow. I don't know if this is a good or bad system, because some people, I like this idea of like, people like do one thing and do it well, or like you got to focus, deep focus or something, or like, and I am the opposite of that, where I'm working on 10 things every day. So part of it is not having a family. I'm a single guy. I just do work and I love it. And I wake up and I work for say 11, 12 hours, but it's not like I'm grueling work for 11, 12 hours. It's kind of like, oh, let's, social media, like what's going on? Let's read an article. Let's do this. It keeps me more fun, right? It's like, oh, I had this idea and then I'm going to do this. And then I'm like, oh, I'm going to make this graphic. So it just keeps it more interesting, but maybe I'm not as efficient in some ways doing this way, but it's what works.
Cool.
Yeah. It might just be how your brain works. Some people are just like that. They can only really focus on one thing for so long before they just disengage. So it's best to just take a break or go do something
Just
else.
mix it up.
Yeah.
And with this stuff, it consumes my life. I have dreams about like, satiety concepts, or I'm like, it's so funny. I even got a grease pen. I got a grease pen for my shower, and I write notes on the shower wall on
That's
the tile.
awesome.
I would suggest to
Next
anyone,
level.
just get a grease pencil. Yeah. Just go on Amazon. It's a few dollars. And I'll have graphics of like, this is like how nutrition works. And this is this is all I think about.
I love it.
Very cool. Oh my gosh. Well, it was so fun chatting with you, Brian. Thanks for sharing all the wisdom that you shared with us. I know you're just you have a wealth of information we didn't even scratch the surface on, but why don't you share again where people can find you and where health coaches can sign up to roll into your technology piece when it's up and running?
Yeah, I'm Food Lies everywhere. If you just search for Food Lies on any social media or YouTube, I should come up there. So I do stuff on all the platforms, Food Lies, and then sapien.org. I just keep it simple. Just go to sapien.org and you kind of can jump off anywhere. It's kind of like a landing page where you could go to the health part. You can see where the film, you could see the Peak Human podcast. Everything will kind of jump off from sapien.org.
Perfection.
Awesome. I had a blast. Thank you, Brian, for sharing all of this with us. And I know we just kind of scratched the surface. So we'll have to have you back on once this goes live, this technology and the movie is out and all that. We'll have you back on so that people know where to find it and can help support it.
I'd love that. Yeah. Thanks so much for, just letting me share the message. It's all I want to do.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Okay. Take care.
This podcast was brought to you by Primal Health Coach Institute. To learn more about how to become a successful health coach, get in touch with us by visiting primalhealthcoach.com/call. Or if you're already a successful health coach, practitioner, influencer, or thought leader with a thriving business and an interesting story, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us at hello@primalhealthcoach.com and let us know why we need to interview you for Health Coach Radio. Thanks for listening.